Hello, dear folks. Welcome to the show. Jack Chow on East West with G&E TV. Today we are, as a matter of fact, scheduled to talk about the 2016 general election. Joining me is my good friend, and I would say a reliable source of information, and attorney at law, Mr. John Shu. Good friend for many, many years. We go back to my radio days, right?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Out of Orange County. And now that we have this new breaking news about Attorney Lam, who allegedly has aided somebody to flee out of the country, though. So I believe everybody heard that. So we want to start by giving a little comment about that. Now that you're here, you're attorney.
Sure.
All right, please. So how do you feel as a first impression about that case?
Well, I think just to give a little background for our viewers, the situation is we have an attorney. His name is Kenneth Liang, L-I-A-N-G. He's 38 years old, and he's an attorney in Irvine, California, which, as most of our viewers know, they have a large Asian population, Chinese American population in Irvine. And he's been accused of witness tampering, which is a felony offense.
All right.
And I would not be surprised if the U.S. Attorney's Office also charged him with obstruction of justice and money laundering too. And what has happened is that over the years, citizens from mainland China have been coming to the United States and having their children here. So these are female tourists.
All right, the pregnant woman.
Right, pregnant women are coming to the United States and they're having their babies in the United States so that the babies can be born as U.S. citizens. The current state of the law and the Constitution in the United States is that if a baby is born on U.S. soil, so that could be in the United States, it could be on an embassy, a U.S. embassy or a consulate, anywhere that is sovereign U.S. soil. Is considered a citizen of the United States. And so if a woman has a baby who's a U.S. citizen, that makes it easier for her to become a U.S. citizen also later, if they want to. Now, this is not unusual. We've had women from Mexico, Central America, South America, all over the world coming to the United States to do that. I think in this case it's a little unusual because in mainland China, there are companies that provide this type of tourism as a service. In other words, the women or their families anyway, they pay these companies some fee. We don't know what it is exactly, but presumably it's pretty high. And then they provide the airplane ticket, they provide the birth space, which is not necessarily a hospital, so it's a little dangerous.
It's household stuff.
It's
right?
like a house that's been converted into a multi-tenant dwelling. Anyway, the federal government is involved. These are federal charges. So the Department of Homeland Security is involved, and he's been accused of trying to basically help smuggle a Chinese citizen. Who was supposed to be a witness.
Confirm the witness, right?
Yeah, she was supposed to be a government witness.
On record.
Yeah, she was supposed to be a government witness, and he was trying to help her escape to China. Once she gets to China, the United States government has no power to force her to come back. We don't have that kind of extradition relationship with mainland China.
I see. But I have a question, John.
Sure.
We learned from the news that this witness was wired while conducting a conversation with the attorney, Mr. Lam.
Yeah.
Right? So is the method adopted legal or not legal?
Well, if the investigators and the U.S. Attorney's Office, if they had a warrant to wiretap the witness and to listen in on their conversation, then it would be legal. If they did not have a warrant, that's going to be kind of questionable. I would imagine that they had a warrant, though. I can't imagine, sending in a wiretap witness without a warrant. And in this situation, there's also an extra piece of caution because Mr. Liang was serving as this woman's attorney. And there is the attorney-client relationship, and it's protected by legal privilege. It's a privileged conversation.
Sure.
It's a privileged relationship. Now, it's the client that has the power to waive the privilege, not the attorney. So if she chooses to have her attorney conversations wiretapped, and the federal government gets a warrant to do it, and then it should be okay.
Would she later on say, "I didn't give permission for her doing that"?
Well,
and, she can recall that, say, "Hey, my private conversation was being invaded."
Yeah, she could, I guess, but I would imagine that the U.S. Attorney's Office was pretty careful and probably had her sign a bunch of documents. I would think that the U.S. Attorney's Office also made sure that there was no language barrier. In other words, she's from mainland China. I would imagine that the U.S. Attorney's Office had translators in and to help her read the documents and understand the documents before she signed them. This investigation has been ongoing. This is not a new, this is not something that just happened yesterday. In other words, the investigation is something that has been ongoing. They must have suspected Mr. Liang anyway of doing this before.
They've been following him for a long time.
Well, we don't know how long, but this is not, I don't think this is the first witness that he's tried to help with this tourism business.
Yeah, okay. I have a bigger question. Now that you mentioned about in China, there are companies provided service like that, and then you have those pregnant women coming here to take advantage of the country, though?
Yeah.
Okay, now, we heard from the news that starting in March, there's a big raid to those facilities or these organizations or those chains, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but the problem is that, a bigger question is that it's been a norm that for this country, because those women from Mexico, from other countries like the Southern America, Latin America, they do that all the time. Why would the government, would the prosecution put too much efforts to the Asian Americans only?
Well, that's really unclear.
Is it the bystander or double standard?
It could be a double standard. I think part of the problem is that the Chinese citizens who come here to have a baby are paying a fee through a company and doing it, with several women kind of crammed together in one house. And I think the main charge against the women, anyway, is visa fraud. Whereas a lot of the women from Mexico and from Central and South America who do this, they're not really paying a company. They pay what they call a coyote or a coyote.
They're a coyote.
Yeah, a coyote to help transport them.
In Chinese term, they call them the snakes.
Right.
The snakes,
that's right.
Right?
Yeah, and but they don't. They're not really paying a company, and so there's not a home, where they go.
I see.
Then there's an economic issue. Irvine is a pretty wealthy community. Especially certain parts of Irvine, like Shady Canyon and Turtle Ridge and Turtle Rock. Those are very expensive homes. And I think, I hate to say this, but I think it's possible, and at least it should be considered. Most of the women from Central America who come to the United States to have their babies, they don't do it in Irvine. They don't do it in a wealthy neighborhood. And these Chinese women are, and they're coming to Irvine and they're doing it. So I think there is a class and an economic issue that should be explored. And then last but not least, I think there's the issue of the Latina women, especially from Mexico and Central America. When they come to the United States to have the baby, most of them, they either stay or they come back. And because there's no visa, they just illegally came. So there's no visa fraud, even though they are illegal immigrants.
Okay.
But I do think that the Democrat Party would like them to stay. And especially in California, the Democrats really control the government in California. They would like for them to stay so that they could become U.S. voters and vote for the Democrats. For the Chinese women who come here and do that, most of them would just prefer to go back to China. And if they do come back to the United States, it's not really for a long time. And in California and in the United States in general, there are many more Latina voters and Latino voters than there are Chinese voters.
So in other words, you're saying there's a politics behind the whole thing?
Well, I think it should be considered. I don't think it's the real reason. I mean, the fact is there's been a crime. There's no question about that. These women who come here and they lie on their visa application, that's a crime. If anybody, an attorney or otherwise, if anybody helps somebody, a material witness, try to escape the country, that's definitely a crime.
Okay.
But I'm saying that illegal immigration is also illegal. That's why we call it illegal. And I'm trying to present some reasons and some factors to consider as to why the prosecution seems to follow heavily on these Chinese women.
That's what I feel. Like that's why I say the double standard thing.
Well, it is a little bit of a double standard, but the fact remains that these people committed a crime.
Okay, very good. So we just want to learn anything from possible chances, opportunities. On this thing, though, on this issue, of course, Mr. Liang is subject to court process to find him guilty or not. Right now, we just assume he's innocent, right?
We have to assume he's innocent. He's only been charged.
However, problems are problems, and he is in the problem, right? So,
he's in trouble.
As attorney, what do you advise as our own folks, please?
Well, I mean, it's sad to see this happen to Mr. Liang because he is a Chinese American, and I think the fact of the matter is that in the United States, there aren't that many Chinese American attorneys.
It's a loss.
And we have I would like to see more Chinese American attorneys or Asian American attorneys in general. So I hope these charges are not true, but we just don't know. It doesn't look good for him, I'll say that right now.
So far.
Yeah, so far it doesn't look good. But I hope they're not true. And he does deserve the presumption of innocence.
Yeah.
So having said that, the best thing that he can do right now is to get a good attorney, and I think he has an attorney. I don't know anything about him. But to work with his attorney and either A, try to clear his name and clear himself of the charges, or B, try to strike the best plea deal that he can.
For some lesser accounts, right?
Yeah, that's what usually happens in a plea deal, that you plead guilty to something that is not as serious as the original charge in return for a lesser sentence and maybe some other, he may have to testify if there's some other larger crime going on. In other words, if there's a conspiracy or if there is some sort of organized process
that he knows of.
Then the U.S. attorney would probably want him to testify or at least give information under oath to that.
Okay, very good. My dear audience, today we're scheduled to talk about 2016 general election when this breaking news happened, that we take a one segment time talk about it. Joining me, my good friend, Mr. Zhang Xu. Back then in Bush 41 time, he was a member on the Supreme Court judges, right?
Well, for both President Bush 41 and President Bush 43,
oh my God,
I had the honor of working on presidential nominations and confirmations, and that included some Supreme Court justices. Yes.
All right, very good. So that you can know, that you can say we're talking to a big guy. Okay, now, so let's take a short moment now. When we come back, we'll touch our major subject today, which is the general election of 2016. Please stay with us.